So we're back. Thank you for
Hi there.
Hi there. Thank you for allowing this lunch break to be a lot shorter than it was supposed to be.
Yeah, it's always
Thank you, Aziz Mulay-Shah. Did I say your name right?
Mulay-Shah, but it's close.
Mulay-Shah. Mulay-Shah.
Yeah.
Aziz Mulay-Shah.
That's right.
Thank you very much for coming all the way from Dubai.
No, thank you.
Mrs. Deborah Webster, thank you so much for joining us once again on stage. Matthias Peitz, what a pleasure to have you. Mark Espinheira, you are some sort of a host, a local host from Cascais, the municipality. We're going to be debating and counter-debating. I'm expecting Deborah to be a warrior on the topic of cities, smart cities, the cities of the future.
That's right.
On top of data science.
Exactly.
May that be what that is.
Thank you so very much,
much.
Guilherme. Hi, Lisbon. Hi, DSPA. How was lunch? What? Please? Was it good? The quiche? Who here is really sleepy now because of the lunch? Yeah. Well, I've got great news for you guys. Because we've got three amazing guests, but two of them, one is from the Municipality of Cascais, that's Marco, and then we have Matthias from the European Union. So, for the next hour, you can stand in line and complain all you want. Right? Who wants to do that? Who here loves complaining about the European Union? Right? Who here loves the Municipality of Cascais? Paying taxes? Right? Yeah. No. And of course, we've got Deborah from all the way from Dubai. So you can pick her brain about future cities, because she knows all about it. Big buildings, lots of fancy trains. Who here has been on Emirates? Anybody? Hands up, Emirates? Yes? Great airline, right? She's the expert. But in all seriousness, we're here to talk about, I think, a really pressing issue, and that is the application of data science in the context of cities of the future. We spent yesterday, and we spent the better part of today, hearing about some of the amazing innovation, the amazing applications of technology, AI, and data science. And in actual fact, those presentations are what the futures of cities are going to be all about. But what we want to do on this panel is actually have a conversation about how you look at this in the context of governing, right? What's the relationship of a future city between governments and the citizen? And where does technology and data science play a role in that, right? So I'm going to change things up a little bit. As the moderator, it's my prerogative. I hope you don't mind. If you guys have questions at any time during the conversation, just stand up, and I'll acknowledge you, and you can speak your mind, all right? You can direct it to anybody in the conversation. I want this to be much more interactive, because it's a debate, it's not a presentation. We don't have fancy slides. We have great photos of us, right? But we don't have fancy slides. So really, I encourage you to really, if you have something that you want to say, please speak up, okay? Or I might have to start picking on you. Where's Paulo? Paulo's in the back. I'm going to pick on Paulo. So without further ado, I'm going to ask each of our expert panelists to introduce themselves. So ladies first, please.
Thank you very much. Nice to see everyone again. So I'm Deborah Webster. I'm the founder of AMANI Circle, and we help investors and companies think of the future, and then we reverse engineer that, and we find the entrepreneurs, technologies, and innovators that will create that future. But what I bring, which is, I think, more interesting, is my background and upbringing. So I was raised in Saudi Arabia, educated between Saudi Arabia, Malta, and the UK, worked and lived in the UK, worked and lived in the States, worked and lived in the Middle East, worked and lived in Asia, have done projects in India, projects in Africa, have worked with ultra-high net worth families, all the way to developing projects for people living on less than $2 a day, building companies in the Middle East primarily. So it's more my experience and insight into people from different walks of life and cultures. So yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Monsieur.
Thank you so much. I can't compete with this long list of countries, but maybe I can bring in a perspective from another country, which is Tunisia. This is where I'm currently working for the European Union for a project which is being piloted by the EU and a very new creative sort of setup and partnership, which is the Global Tech Panel. This organization, or this partnership, if you want, or coalition, wants to try and tackle technology and help use technology for development.
Thank you, sir. Senor.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So my name is Marco Espinheira. I'm head of future at Cascais Municipality. And my work is not only to manage a bunch of areas that I have under me, but also think a little bit how the municipality will grow into the future. And of course, try and envision what the city will be in so many years from now. And understanding as well all the disruptions that might happen in everything that we do, starting with the government itself, the government of the municipality, and then down to the citizen service, which is what we do every day. And so this is currently what I'm doing for the past 5 years here in Cascais.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to open this up for the first question to the floor. All right? How many people here think they're using AI-enabled or data science-applied services in their cities? Can I just see a show of hands? When you go and renew your license, for example, can you do that online? Yes? Yes? Is it easy to do? It is? Excellent. So already that's an example of how AI is being deployed and data science is being deployed, right? What about at the hospital? Are there apps for you to do an initial triage using an AI-enabled doctor, for example, to get an early diagnosis for healthcare, to get your medicine? Does that exist in the world in which you live in these days? Hands up? No? But that's another example, right? And we see this. We saw the presentation about healthcare yesterday. There are many applications around this. But actually, what I want to ask the panel, and to you as well, is it seems to me that we don't have a lot of policies in place, services in place as yet, where there's a lot of marketing and communication done to the average citizen. There's a lot of research and development that's going on behind the scenes. But I want to ask all three of you, and maybe you guys have the answers as experts as well, so please jump in when you have the chance. What do you think is the issue here? Do we have enough services that are using data science? And is it being communicated properly to average citizens who are the beneficiaries? Anyone?
Yeah.
Please.
No, I'll chime in later if necessary.
There is a lot of services already using AI. There is not enough communication on what they are using and how they are using it. There's also a lot of, I don't know if I could say, tech washing communication about it. So people saying that they are this and they are that, and they really are not. But I really think that we are still in the phase of exploring, of experimenting, of trying out new things. So there's a mix of everything right now.
Okay, and can you get more specific though? Like what would be some of the services that you're offering, for example, in Cascais at the moment?
So, for instance, our command center is correlating all the information that it gets to try and predict what's going to happen within the city. And so we can do that up to 3 hours in the future. But we also are receiving data from the bicycles that tells us how the pavement is, for instance. And that's just basic IoT. It's not really AI or anything. So, and that's why I'm saying, when we are talking about AI in government, we really have to push the envelope, and we really have to start thinking about setting up systems in the municipality that actually make decisions for the executive or towards the citizens that the citizens trust and follow. We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
Okay. Anybody else? Matthias, do you have some insights around communicating better for citizens so that they better understand what kind of new technologies are coming to the fore and how they can be used to the benefits of the citizen?
I read a study this week saying, by one consultancy saying that GovTech is a market of 400 billion euros globally, which is a massive figure. So I think there is a lot of things to do. So what is it really? I mean, it's services like mobility for citizens using a bicycle, like in Cascais, but I think there's so many other services. I think GovTech is really a mix of having like government services so far, but it cannot be public procurement, maybe more my area where you work on foreign policy, it's cybersecurity, it's all sorts of things, meeting what we have been discussing over the last 2 days, meeting AI, data science, machine learning, etc. So it's a really big thing, but trying to break it down, yes, as I think we were pointing out, there's not enough communication. Do we have enough use cases? Do we have enough adoption? I would say no, because, and I think it has to do with the fact that it's new to the government. There's still a lot of way to go, and that there's an issue, which was actually a very interesting presentation by the previous speaker, on trust. So where does the trust I think it's an interesting dilemma, because a lot of people do easily, we heard about Face App, use applications without thinking too much. But when it comes to a government service, maybe people are a bit more hesitant to use it. So I think in this sense, trust is more important, and then we talk about data governance. And here we come to the subject that you started with. Governance is a very important thing to increase the trust of the citizens, because you want actually public policy, and the government is there to not only, it's not making an income, but actually serve people, to help vulnerable people, to have innovation, which is in an internet where you see now maybe more centralization and less innovation and more lock-in effects. So this is where I think government can play a big role, and there's a lot of potential. But I think we need to talk about data governance.
Okay, so let's just hold that thought, because we will come back to data governance. Deborah, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think there's the type of government. So, for instance, Dubai has certain advantages because it's not a democracy.
Yes.
They have deployed AI in order to increase efficiency of services, and people that are there assume that nothing is private. So the barrier is different. I think democratic countries are more concerned about citizens, which I think is fantastic. I'm not saying that Dubai isn't concerned about citizens, it's just that the framework is very different. And then it's very interesting to look at Estonia, for instance, on how they managed to get such transparency on the blockchain. And if you look at their history and you can start to see how transparency for them and having someone with all their information wasn't such a big deal for them. Yeah. So the mindset's fascinating.
Aziz, let me just tell you something that you mentioned in the beginning that is about the legislation. And you know, we are living in an incredibly fast, disruptive era. And it's hard enough for companies to keep up with it. And so usually companies are really the first ones to adapt, and then people are the second ones to adapt, and then third and last and very last are the governments to adapt. Right. And so that's a huge shift, paradigm shift that we need on the legislator to be able to allow all of these experiments, all of these uses of technology to happen while protecting what the governments are there to protect, which is the people and the values that any society endures.
Right, okay, cool. Let me turn to the audience. A lot of you are practitioners in the data science field. How comfortable are you, how much interaction do you have with government? Have you had the opportunity to meet a member of government and have a conversation about how you can deploy your services in the context of a future governance model? Show of hands. Only one person. Isn't that a problem, guys? By the way, they're not sweating it, eh? How come no one's complaining to the EU and to the Municipality of Cascais. Let's go, right? There's only one person in the audience. Isn't there a disconnect? Wouldn't you agree that there's something not going on in terms of the communication? Or is it maybe that there's just not enough services yet? Maybe it has to trickle down. Maybe all of the amazing things that all of you have presented over the last 2 days have yet to become mature enough to be applied in the context of government. Is that a possibility? And that gets to my next question to all three of you. What areas of governments at the municipal level in the future city context would be best, where could you deploy AI, technology, and data science? What areas would be the best served for this, do you think?
I mean, it really depends, I think, on the local context where you are. I mean, in my case, where I work in Tunisia, there are other areas of importance than there are probably here. So I think this is really, it always depends. You cannot generally say this is the area. I mean, one thing I would always advise is to start understand the problem and the needs of the citizen at mostly local, down to the local level, and then you can see, do we need a technology solution for that or not? So it's the approach which really matters in this regard. Then you can, I mean, I think there are a lot of use cases of mobility, for example. And when you talk about city, many people think about mobility here, which is something I think you are working on. There are many cities in Europe, I know, that they do. Also in Tunis now introduces some mobility schemes. And that's an area where government indeed can play an important role, where we also have to think in terms of sustainability, inclusive mobility that is for everybody, open, and think about the vulnerable populations in your community.
Okay, cool.
So
Deborah?
I'm going to go out on a limb here.
You're welcome to go out on as many limbs as you want.
So citizens don't care about technology. They care about...
Wait. Did you hear that? Citizens don't care about technology. Is that true, guys?
Can I clarify and explain why?
Wait, guys, really, you can explain, but is that true? Do you guys care about technology? No, you don't, sir. Okay. Anybody else? Don't we all love playing around on our phones and, right? In fact, he's texting his wife right now, right? They see? Sorry, Deborah, I interrupted you, please.
The citizen is a consumer, right? They care about convenience, cost effectiveness. They care about having easy, like healthcare services. They care about education. If technology enhances that experience and the quality of that and makes, I don't want to use the word democratizes because everyone's using the word democratizes and democratizing. We're not democratizing anything. We're actually distorting things. So if technology is an enabler, we can't speak to regular citizen, I don't think, about technology. We can educate them as to this is how it's enabling us to provide you better services, but we've got to focus on the service that matters to them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay, cool. Marco, any thoughts?
Yeah, that's exactly our approach. So we're focusing on citizens' service, we're focusing on quality of life, and we fall back to technology when that enables us to achieve our goals either faster, cheaper, or in a more effective way, period. And that's really how it is.
Okay.
That said, usually I see it here, but it's not here. The first autonomous vehicle in Portugal, it's on a test run here at Nova, and so that works fully autonomously. And so transportation it's an easy one, both on autonomous vehicles and on the traffic lighting system, on the lighting as well on the street. Okay. It's also a very easy one, and we are having already systems having some kind of thought and process some kind of information and deciding, although again I tend to run away from the term smart cities. I will happily talk about intelligent cities, but that for us is really when a city can think, and we're not there yet.
Right, okay. I want to turn to a topic that we touched on a little bit yesterday, which is around ethics and data, right? One of the things that occurs to me is that the notion of collection of data, right? So for an intelligent city to function, you need to have data, right? You need to collect bits of information, and then you need to make sense out of it. I think that's what data science is all about at the end of the day, right? Fernando, right? Yeah. So my question is this: if we're going to add more collection tools, is there a danger of running afoul against the rights of an individual? Is there some sort of consent? We talked about informed consent yesterday. So, you know, when we talk about cameras in the corners of rooms, when we talk about microphones catching conversations, when we talk about being able to tap into reading messages, when we talk about usage of Fitbit to see how many people are walking or running, do we feel comfortable about this? And that more governments are collecting more and more data about our personal lives? That, to me, gives me pause, I have to admit. Even though, you know, I don't really think about it on a daily basis. I'm just wondering, if we have to have more sensors to collect data, will that somehow interfere in this sort of rights versus responsibilities of the citizen and government?
May I? Okay.
I knew, Deborah, you were going to launch into this. Go ahead.
So I think the best analogy is a frog that's put in cold water. The heat has been turned on, and the water has been increasing in temperature. If you said to people 20 years ago, I'm going to put a listening device in your house, I mean, if the government were to say, I'm going to put a listening device in your house, your reaction would be something along the lines of up something, right? But the interesting thing is, from a consumer perspective, we're buying a listening device, which is, for instance, Alexa, and we're putting it into our house.
Yeah.
So our norms have shifted. And this is where the danger of manipulation comes in, because power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we are assuming that the people that have the data, but more importantly, the insights, are a safe pair of hands.
Yes.
And here we're talking about governments. And people don't trust politicians. They expect politicians to lie. So we can't really kind of unpack the digital ethics piece from a citizen perspective, and unless we also look at the structures that we have and the character traits that we are positively voting for.
Yes.
That I find more worrisome.
So if I may, you've thrown out another zinger there. Who here thinks that all politicians lie? Show of hands?
Can
Really?
we make a distinction between national and local?
Oh, yeah. Yes, you can, sir. Yes, you can. Local governments are always ethical, especially the municipality of Cascais.
But Aziz, I'm saying this because I believe this is actually to be true. So we trust more in our local government than our central government.
Right.
And that's because the proximity. And so the mayor is the one there actually solving problems. Central government doesn't do that.
Yes.
And so that changes the relation. And that's why my experience here in Cascais, I found out that the city hall is an excellent facilitator. And it's the excellent institution to put together a bunch of people talking and sharing a bunch of things, and to be the most trustworthy institution, I'm talking about companies, central government and local government, to, for instance, hold your data.
Right.
Not saying that local politicians don't lie, I'm not discussing that, but I'm saying that the trust is a little bit different. But regarding your question, let me just say that I think we are looking at it wrong.
Okay. So what you're saying is I'm wrong?
Yes.
Very good. I am wrong. Thank you.
I said your question was not the right one, because I think the future has a price, and that price is transparency, or lack of privacy, if you want. It's not said yet. I think that we should all, within our community, decide actively what is the length of that or the extent of that price. It can be a little bit, it can be a lot, it can be everything. It's not inevitable. We have to decide that. We should decide that. But I'm sure that some level of it will happen. But the interesting thing is that I don't think we discussed privacy as much as we've been discussing it right now. And data collection happened since the beginning of time.
Correct.
And so we always had our data somewhere being used by someone, and we never discussed it. And so we're discussing it now, which is good. And now it's true that we have much more opportunities to collect data. And some data is irrelevant, like the number of people on the street. But some other data, like recording our conversations, it's very relevant and it's very different, and we need to understand why is that being done. But the same way that it's very easy to capture that data, it's also very easy for us to demand to understand where it is, how it is, and what are people doing with that. So the question is not really about data, I believe. It's about transparency.
Okay, that's a very good
for
point.
everyone, people and government and institutions.
Correct. Matthias, I know you wanted to say something, please.
Yes, I think it's actually in this sense technology it's helping us, and I believe in this in creating more transparency. Because just to give you an example, if you want to unify all the different websites a government has running ministries, municipalities, is a chance to rethink the system. I mean, do you want to serve your citizens, so you have actually the people behind it to rethink and say, look, we want to be user-centric, we want to help our citizen on this website. They come here, they don't want to spend so much time. They are used to applications which are super easy. So also the governments and municipalities, and I'm not talking only about, I'm talking politicians, you have an administration behind these. All these people working in government or in administration, they need to learn, they know, but maybe develop this thinking in terms of how to make it really easy to get your service as fast as possible, as easy as possible, as helpful as possible for the citizens, so that a citizen can, for example, go on a search engine, find the service, and then go off the public website. Instead of before saying, oh, I need to actually understand first how the government functions, what ministry, how, and what, where I have to go. So it's making it easy for citizens, making it simple. This is also a term in using different language.
Yeah.
You can facilitate a lot of things. So technology, for me, in this sense, it's a helper here. Just to give an example, what the European Commission is funding under the Horizon 2020.
Oh, the great European
program.
Commission, by the way, right? Yeah.
Yes. Is funding a pilot now for a few years in Barcelona and in Amsterdam. It's called Decode project. If you want to search the Decode project EU, you find there the idea behind is actually to work on transparency, to work on governance, how you create a system that the citizen can decide, I want to give away my private data, and I can decide to do it or not to do it, and to give it to the government. So you actually create an architecture, an infrastructure which you can understand and which you have it's your decision as a citizen, with all the maybe digital skills understanding this, to go there. And this maybe adds to this. What we need in this sense is also to enable our public workers to have an understanding what digital means, as well as the citizen. I think there's a lot of work to do on both sides, and adding also as GovTech, government technology, is something where you need to invest a lot of training in the long term. You have maybe on the other side the private sector, the startup, who can go much faster. They can help you develop services. Maybe you're collaborating with some startups. You do challenges. They come up with a solution. There's an AI application being developed that then maybe the municipality or the government can take over. And on the other hand is you have the government itself be ready to have that thinking how to serve your citizen digital mindset, or however you want to call this.
Okay, that's fascinating because so the European Commission is undertaking a project to allow individuals to choose to opt in or opt out as to what kind of data they share with the European Union. Is that correct? Did I summarize that properly?
City
of Barcelona.
Amsterdam and Barcelona.
Got it, cool. So I'm just wondering then, that brings up the question around digital literacy. How many of us feel comfortable talking about some of the applications and technologies that were discussed yesterday? And do we feel like we can have a proper sort of layman's conversation about it? I know that I can't because I'm an idiot, right? I'm not an expert in any of this, and I need to educate myself, right? So I'm just wondering, you have a pilot project that you're working on in Tunisia, and I know that a lot of that is focused on digital literacy, and I know that the work that you're doing with startups and founders also involves some training around digital literacy as well. How important is this? How important is it to have a conversation between government and citizens where the citizen can explain what it is that they want from their government services?
I think in Tunisia there's a wonderful success story of a creative partnership of some sort, where in 2016 a group of 70 entrepreneurs came together to work on rethinking how they can relaunch the entrepreneurship ecosystem in this country. They came together and decided to help the government draft legislation. So government and entrepreneurs met, 70 people, they built a startup task force. They sat together, they are using a tool which is called the Parliament Academy, which was a communication, they used as a communication sort of space where these entrepreneurs could communicate with parliamentarians about what they are looking for, what they need. So this was over many years that they worked together, very dedicated without being paid, and they came up with now what's called, and it's became known in North Africa and even in Africa, other countries are calling to implement something similar, called the Startup Act, which makes it easy to create and liquidate a company. So there is legislation, obviously, which needs to be overhauled in many, many countries, which is maybe too old-fashioned for the digital world. So the government is needed in this sense. So this Startup Act, for example, helps you to be tax exempt for 8 years, have state-paid salary for 3 founders, have a venture capital fund, so you can be help in financing, as well as getting more promotion to have access to international market.
Okay, cool.
Aziz,
Please.
Very quickly, I think that the focus is not really the digital literacy, which I agree and I think it's super important, but I think it's more about digital ethics that we need to understand a little bit better and develop a little bit better. Because with a fairly simple AI, I can go and search everything that you post on Facebook, on Instagram, whatever, and I can learn a bunch of things about you. And that's public information. That's not even on a server somewhere closed to someone. You publish it to the world. And so it's not about the problems that you have using Facebook because of Facebook is using something. Yeah. It's about that being available to anyone. I want to share with you 2 very quick stories about the projects that we did here with the young kids. And so first one, very young kids between 9 and 12. We have a participatory budget. We decided to include that in the schools. And so we did a citizenship process with them to create actually the rules of the participatory budget in the school. Okay. And so they were choosing everything, how everything happens and so forth. We got to the part of the voting, which I budgeted quite heavily on apps and sites and everything, Facebook, messengers, whatever. They said, no, we want it on paper, in person, and secret. I'm talking about kids from 9 to 14 years old.
Yeah.
Okay?
Amazing.
Because of the trust in the system. We don't want our parents in the house to tell us which project to vote on. We don't want our teachers to know anything. The other very interesting example is, again, a program with kids a little bit older on the high school level. We got 200 kids from all over, every school, from rich, poor, several religions. This was a program with the Pope Francis Foundation here. And we asked them, let's work on 2 problems that you have. But first, let's decide what those problems are. And so you can choose anything you want to discuss, and we as a city will try to make that happen or respond to it.
Right.
Zero technology. One problem was quite preoccupying, was depression in youth, and the other one was we want to change education.
Interesting.
Okay? So, again, as Deborah was saying, not really about technology. We need to look into the person first, and then we need to react to on what comes next.
Okay. Deborah, before you jump in, if I can just push back gently on your response. I guess I'm asking the question because somebody like me, who doesn't even know where to begin the conversation, admittedly, I'm not the average, I'm not the average audience. There are experts here in the audience who are infinitely more well-versed in the topic than I am. But I would feel that, a municipality, a future city, should be communicating with the lowest common denominator, which is me, somebody who doesn't even have an idea where to begin the conversation. So, for example, I know the terms around AI, I know the terms around data science, but to be well versed in this, to have a sophisticated conversation where I could say, well, I want this data to be shared, but I want this data held back. I can't even have that conversation. You see what I'm getting at? So for me, I guess I'm asking the question, is there a need to create a level playing field?
There is.
And young people it's happening with young people, right? The education system is now changing.
We are in the process of building a data council, so based mainly on citizens, from young citizens to older citizens, but trying to be as much representative as we want, so that they can decide on a regular basis what kind of decisions that we are making about data and publish it, and looking towards transparency. And we also are starting with a little bit similar to what you're doing with data volunteering program, which is really not as much as me choosing what to give to the city, but really participating with specific data that the city or the universities might need, and then we ask people to share the data for that. But all of that is part of digital literacy. Also in cybersecurity, we're planning to start now a very big initiative on teaching, learning, making it available and easier for people to learn about all of the aspects of cybersecurity.
May I ask a question?
Yeah,
I'm curious, are you collaborating with mobile operators to deliver that?
We are.
Cool.
We are, and to get data as well.
Because mobile operators, so we've been at this point before, right? So if you look at mobile operators, for instance, in sub-Saharan Africa, they leapfrogged. So you look at mobile payments, you look at how they leverage mobile phones, low-tech phones, into the community and helping people in less than $2 a day. They're tackling financial inclusion, et cetera, et cetera. And they are the ones that pushed on the regulators and created the policies. So we're waiting for government to take the lead. I think we're going to be waiting for a very long time, and a lot of people are going to be burned and hurt along the way. So private enterprise drives it. But when it comes to entrepreneurs, for instance, time is against them. Entrepreneurs are time poor. And they're under pressure in order to get results, get returns, and frankly, don't have time to, government works on a very different
Yeah,
pace.
well,
So
certainly in
there's
Dubai it does. Yeah, we know.
No,
we
it's
know that.
everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And also the level of thinking. So you have certain people in certain governments, and it's different, right? So it's a very individual thing. So it's incorrect to have broad brush statements. Some people in government really get it. They're really proactive. They're really gung-ho. Others don't know what they don't know, but they're trying to tell the people that do know actually what the issues are. And just like, yeah, not quite.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Before we move on, are there any comments from the audience? Feel free, really. This is your chance. Remember, you can complain, right? Please.
Why do you always point at me when you say complain?
Well, it's in the general direction. General direction. You know what I mean. Please, please, please. Yeah, we don't have a microphone, but if you could just speak up, and then I'll relay the question again. Technology. Thank you, Guillermo. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello again. Much better.
Hello.
So I was asking, today 50% of population lives already in cities, and within the next 20 years, the numbers say that 70% or more will be there. So in a way, there will be a huge concentration of people in the cities, and this would probably mean a decentralization of power. So what today is a local government, probably it will be more of a central government. My question is, how do you think cities will be dealing with all this concentration, with life, the local and the global issues? How do you envision this future?
Thank you very, very much. I think it's a fascinating question. And then on top of that, can data science and the application of data science help in resolving that challenge, right? Panel, any thoughts?
What time horizon?
Well, we're talking about in the next 30 to 40 years, 70% of the global population will be living in major urban cities.
So I would challenge that.
Oh boy.
I get very concerned when we come up with this headline and everyone goes gung-ho towards this headline without thinking, is it true and is it wise? So at the same time, we're saying that we're going to disrupt, we're going to dislodge a lot of jobs. Now, people tend to go to cities because of jobs. So we can't answer one question without answering the other question. So if we're going to remove all these jobs, why would people want to be in cities? So then they have choice. So if they're somewhere else, then what does that look like? And if new jobs are going to come about, what do they look like and where do they need to be? So one of the data points that was shared by Miguel yesterday is that the next generation want to work within 20 minutes of their house, which I find actually quite concerning, because you cannot be wise, especially as a data scientist, if the only place you've ever worked is 20 minutes away from your house. So whilst they may think that's what they want, I think we need to challenge the thinking, and I think we need to challenge the thinking behind the narratives as well. I didn't answer your question, but I kind of put a spanner in the works. Does that help? Not really.
I've been asking all these scientists all these years, why aren't people going to be decentralized? But all the latest carbon neutral roadmaps are doing the scenarios with people living in cities. Now, what will happen in the cities is something different. The difference of work and leisure, and how will you be occupied, what will be in the place of cars, etc., etc. But it seems all the scientists say, maybe all of them are wrong, that people will move into cities.
Okay.
I don't challenge that, but I do believe that Deborah has a point. But my personal feeling is that humankind wants to be together, and so cities have been evolving since they were created, and I think they will continue to evolve. It makes sense from an aspect of critical mass as well for services and for the environment, for carbon neutral solutions, it also makes sense. So I think it's possible. I understand that could be some deviations. And I would also say that it's true, it's already changing the aspects of government being, the power being shifted to either supranational institutions like the EU or to regional, more localized governments. I think the form of the local government will not change. It cannot change. That's why you see Washington, D.C. as a government stopping or closing every other year, but you never see Washington City stop for one day in its life, because it cannot. That's where the trash is being collected, that's where the streets are being cleaned, and so forth. So at that level, I don't think the city will change. Might be very big, might need some other kind of organization, but then you will also have the help of AI and robots and so forth that I think will replace about 80% of our services right now in a more efficient way, and that could grow exponentially as well.
So I agree with you that humans like to be close to each other, but I think there is a number, right? And this would be a really interesting exercise for the data scientists to take on. It's like, is there an optimal size of a city? And we can't just look at Western societies, we need to look in the developing world, because people can go a little bit bananas when they go into cities. And, it reminds me of a conversation I was having with this wonderful Emirati gentleman. And I was asking him, so the UAE it's a country that's 50 years old, right? So it's fascinating to see how a city is born and built from its very foundation. So it's magical. And when you consider what it has, it's mind-blowing. But I was talking to this Emirati gentleman, and I was asking him his view of how Dubai has developed. And he looked at me, he's like, I used to know my neighbor, and I don't know who lives next to me anymore. So there's no point in being a city if you don't have community. So I think we need to focus on community and not so much city.
Matthias, what does the Global Tech Panel have to say about rising density of urban centers? And, maybe the EU has a position on this too, I don't know.
I can give you my opinion. Two
please,
things I can say is that which is sort of paradoxical, because when you say, look, we have all that technology, you could live now on the countryside, but to the contrary, actually, digitalization means that you need to move closer, because innovation happens when a lot of people are together. And that's one of the paradoxes. And I also think cities are in a way, as you mentioned, for carbon neutrality and cost saving, it's much better to move towards cities. I think a lot of more investments need to be done there to make it better. Thinking of governance, how many, that's a big question. How many would you allow, how many people live in a certain space? So there's planning needed. I think even there, I read recently some studies there saying the governance model will shift also more from nation state towards cities. What is this is going to leave us with? In Tunisia, it's one of you have to working as EU also on decentralization, local governance, that more of the other cities except for the capital is being developed. And that's a very important development as well.
Right. Did that answer your question, ma'am? Yes? Kind of, yeah? Anybody else? Please. Oh, Guilherme. The microphone is with Guilherme. Oh, there's another one. Great. Just one question, then we'll let you speak afterwards. We have a question here, and then we'll let you speak afterwards. Thanks.
Just very briefly, I will not want to live in a city that's got everything for me, technology enabled. I will always be myself, and for sure a lot of other people. I will want to live in a city that's somehow unsettled, and because that's just challenging. I have been to Dubai. I'm hoping I'll never go back there again.
What? It's the best city in the world. Come on.
On the other hand, I've been several times to Tel Aviv, and I forget about religion, and I want to go back there because that that challenging vibe of the unsettlement of a city. That's not everything is totally fluid, technology enabled, etc. Is gonna for sure keep on wanting me to go back there and to other cities such as, So I'm not talking about third world, not the first world. I want to stay in between, so to say.
But Guillermo, you're invalidating the whole point of this conference.
I'm challenging you guys.
No, but
Less is more, right?
But it's not.
No,
really,
but on the other hand, I'm never gonna be in the Alentejo, which is the the interior southern part of Portugal, where everything is like. I wonder if internet connection reaches out there. Of course it does. You know what I'm saying?
Whenever you move to a city where the trash is not picked up, then we'll talk.
I know that. But it's just that we're taking this conversation to an extent that it's all about city perfection, if you want.
Right. I get the point. Please.
I'd like to actually, so there are certain... So I love Saudi Arabia. I was raised there, so I see it in a very different way. And people who meet me that know I'm outspoken and like a pain in the ass are kind of surprised that I love Saudi. But I know, when I used to be in executive search, I knew certain executives in Saudi Arabia that would, if I called them, they're like, Deb, if you want to move to Dubai, forget it, I'm not interested. And the reason for that is Saudi actually has a very, very, very strong community. So we moved to Saudi when I was 2 years old. We still have family friends that I've known since then. And the world is very small. It's about community because it's about connection.
Yeah. Great points. The young lady in the back, please.
Okay, so I just want to highlight two things. One is, if we are talking about smart cities, we are talking about systems. And we are talking more than provide smart services or smart use cases. And what I feel is we don't have a clear data strategy. And without a clear data strategy, if we don't know the purpose, how we can build something, we don't know. We are just providing things that are completely fragmented. And this is not smart cities. Those are provide smart services. The other issue or the other point is regarding trust. In a city where we have a huge percentage of elderly people, how we can say that they believe or they trust in the services that we are providing, because we can trust when we understand or when we clearly understand what are the consequences. And if we want to be honest, the elderly people are not able to understand the consequences of our data services.
And that's what I was getting at earlier, right? Not everybody's a young person getting the education from elementary school. It's Marissa who did the presentation on trust. I'm going to put you on the spot. Did you hear her comment about the elderly people, including myself? There's an issue of trust, right? Well, I am old, by the way, very old. Do you think you can respond to her? No? I don't want to put you on the spot. It's okay.
You already
it's all
did.
Good.
She was already here.
No. Okay, sorry. Never mind. No, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. No, I don't want to put her on the spot. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. If you want to, please feel free to. Okay, so in the back, so the question was about the elderly. How can we have a notion of trust if older people really aren't well versed in this entire conversation around data and data science? Is that correct? Did I paraphrase the question properly? Yeah.
Can you please repeat it? I'm sorry, I was...
yeah, no worries. It's really, it's about a question of trust, right? So your presentation is perfectly suited for this. The question was, for those who are elderly, who are older, of the older generation, how can you have an issue of trust between a city and its citizens if they're really not part of the conversation, if they can't really truly understand and engage with issues around data science, AI, and technology? I think that's the question. Is there is there even that notion of trust missing in the elderly population of a city?
Actually, currently what data has shown, which was quite counterintuitive, is that younger people are actually more skeptical towards technology than the older ones.
Really? Aha!
So I found this very surprising, but there are mixed results, but this is something which is quite new right now, so.
Okay.
Let me, Aziz,
Please.
I want to just address the question directly. That the fact that we are talking about a bunch of different ways to treat data and to use data, we are not talking about strategy at all. But that will depend on each city. It can be completely different from one city to the other. That depends on the city itself and the community itself. We have a very clear strategy for Cascais. It's we want to create a city for families to create their project of happiness, and that's very focused on the quality of life. And as I said, everything that we're talking about only comes into place if it helps us reaching that goal. So none of us is talking about any kind of strategy for the use of AI on a specific area. Regarding trust, I always remember the first time I went with my great-grandmother to an ATM machine in Porto, that's where I lived. And she could not understand where the money was coming from. And this was, I was 13 years old, so I'm like you, I'm a little bit old. So this was more than 30 years ago. And we had that discussion exactly at that time. And I mean, it happens, that's life.
So
both
it's
getting
inevitable.
old
Yeah.
and both getting modern.
Right.
It's just what it is.
Right. Some thoughts on this?
No, by inference, you've both described me as old, which, as a
Not
woman,
at
I
all.
object
You're
to.
super young, Deborah. Super young, Deborah. Both in spirit and in age, so don't worry. Please, yes, please. Please.
I have been working on a project for actually Gulbenkian Foundation, and is measuring intergenerational preference, which I think it's really important to take those into account. It's not just a matter of trust, but it's also a matter of how different generations care for other generations. And surprisingly, we observe that older people are more selfish and care less for young generations. And this might be a surprise. So usually in general, it doesn't mean that you don't care for your grandson or your granddaughter, you do, but in general you care less. So I think there is lots of work to be done there. Also in relation to digital literacy, it's also the importance of this digital literacy for yourself, but also for young generations. And I think more than also just trust, we also have to, like older generations have to kind of be more or less selfish, be more altruistic towards younger generations and see that we are working towards a better future for them.
Yes.
So I think there's lots of work to be done there.
May I ask a question about the research? What country was that in?
So was here in Portugal.
Okay,
interesting.
So I would probably say that there might be a similar pattern in the UK, which would explain Brexit.
Oh, here we go. Brexit. No. No Brexit talk allowed. I'm sorry. Sorry, Deborah.
Well,
And that's what I'm saying.
And I just have now a question myself, and it's actually a curiosity because I'm interested in data, but also I'm very interested in the impact of certain interventions. So we are talking about digital literacy. So what I'm more interested in is like, what sort of outcomes do you think are worth to look at when we want to provide more digital literacy? So if I want to work on a certain intervention, like to improve digital literacy, or let me talk about, for instance, financial literacy. I know for sure that with financial literacy, I want to, let's say, increase the savings in a population, and that's a very important outcome. So, in your opinion, what are the important outcomes that we should look when we are trying to increase digital literacy? Like
Great
wages,
question.
future wages. So
Great question. Yeah, absolutely. Panel?
So we're not zombies. A really simple example, though, is who drives a car which isn't a Tesla? Okay.
What? All of you guys drive Teslas?
Which isn't a Tesla.
Oh, sorry.
I was just being not funny. But anyway. Who indicates every single time they change a lane? So we have technology, a car is a technology, that we actually are using dangerously. More people are killed in traffic accidents than terror attacks. It's by changing lanes without indicating and by driving up too close to someone else's ass. So we need to be aware and have personal responsibility and awareness as to the consequences of our actions. You could kill someone every single time you get into a car. So that, I think, is...
A very good point. Actually, this brings me up...
So it's life literacy.
And we're wrapping up here, so I know we're short on time. Yeah, of course. And Matthias has to actually catch a plane because he's got meetings in Berlin. He's very important. But just to close this up, you know, I want to throw this question out to the panel. What's the future going to look like in terms of more data science, more AI, more technology in the context of cities? And one thing that you touched on, and I'm sorry I don't remember your name, but the presenter earlier this morning, Sandra, right? Sandra had a brilliant presentation, and you talked about nudging, right? And behavioral insight. So this is something that fascinates me, and it refers to your point around the clicking, you know, the U-turn indicators. Can we use data science to nudge people, to nudge citizens into being good citizens, for example?
And bad.
To be, and bad, yes. And also be healthier, right? Is this the wave of the future? Is this what we're looking at? Cities and officials in cities that guide us in almost a paternalistic way, right? I have some issues around this, but your thoughts as a way to conclude this discussion.
Well, talking about Berlin and Germany, I think for historical reasons, there's actually a resistance to nudging and some of the behavioral insights you were mentioning. So it's actually not such a big topic there. So I think, again, it depends really very much. You cannot generalize this is what the future would look like. I think it's something, it's still really early to develop. If I could say a wish, then I would just say, you know, we need to become more literate in how we use technology, and that there is more choice in a way how we use technology, where we know more what being aware of our data. And this is actually the first step, and that goes both for the citizens, for the government, and that there are actually more sort of unexpected, maybe still partnerships and new ways of collaborating. There was a presentation also earlier, I don't know if it was also Marisa, who talked about the costs of collaboration. But indeed, collaboration is super important. And just to come back to my current work, for me, that it's a wonderful example how you can move something forward for a society, for a community, even if there are costs attached, even if it takes a few years. But then we are coming to a model where people can make their own choice, it's informed, and then you have actually what was highlighted earlier, you can also build a community.
Thank you very, very much, Matthias. Anybody else?
So, yeah, I think that, again, I'm much more worried about transparency, because as long as you know what some technology, some app, some anything is using your information for, then I start talking about literacy. And then it's the time that you need to know how to read that information or that data available or collecting. But right now we need to know. I mean, someone using FaceApp that doesn't know that thing is being used for something else than it's being said for, then you have a problem, because people can be incredibly literate, but they're being misleading.
Yes.
Not to say other things. So I would focus there. There's a lot of things that we need to still do regarding transparency. also with the data. I mean, right now there's a lot of city halls that starting to have departments of nudging or behavioral insights, which makes sense. Right now it's much easier to do engaging nudging initiatives, but it's not new. I mean, that was born with advertising.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so right now you can do it at a more personal level, for the good and for the bad, as you've been seeing all over. So it comes down again to transparency. If you know that some video or some post is fake or not, or if you are just allowed to understand it as true. And that's the problem that I think we're facing, that is right now bigger than the literacy.
Thank you very much, Marco. Deborah?
I think the bigger problem is laziness. So one could argue that there is transparency because they do have the terms and conditions and say what's in them and where the data is being used, et cetera, but we're too lazy to read them. And who has time to read 19 pages every single time they want to look at a website? So we need to re-look at the terms and conditions and privacy policies and how they're presented to consumers. And as for what the future looks like, there are potential futures, but there's three that I kind of always hold in the center of my mind. And one is where, because certain people are really hooked on the coolness of technology, implants, cyborgs, and the philosophy there is humans good, tech-enabled humans better. There's the other one where it's very much Big Brother, which we're already seeing play out. Yeah. And there's another pocket where technology is very much there to serve humanity, which seems to be more kind of roughly the European model. But I think then there's going to be a fourth pocket, which will be from the burnout and the negative consequences of the other three scenarios. They'll go and not want to have anything to do with any piece of tech whatsoever.
Yeah.
But if you have kids, I would encourage them to pursue one of two career paths. One, to be a data ethics lawyer, and the other to be a hacker, a white hat, because there are going to be innocents that are, there's always innocence. So I think a white hat, and also from a cybersecurity perspective, I think there will always be demand for those.
Amazing. Thank you so much, panel. A warm round of applause for that, really. Tremendous. And can I also say, what a privilege it is to be here. Thank you so much to DSPA. Thank you, Guillermo, for being a great host. And thanks to you, because you guys are such an engaging audience. The comments are amazing, and it's wonderful to have these kind of discussions. I hope we can do more of it next time. Thank you so, so much.
Marco, Matthias, have a safe flight back home. Your car is going to be outside in 2 minutes. See you in a bit. Aziz, thank you very much. Excellent. We could be here for a long time.